So it starts with our informational data. We then use that information and we might use it for processing. It might be personal information. We have our retention trigger, and our retention trigger identifies when information that we've got becomes subject to record keeping principles. Then we have our retention period, which is the archive, and that's when we move data from being used in the business to an archive where it's no longer used. One of the record keeping principles is that if data is still being used, it's not considered archived. Once information is moved to archive, it sits there for a retention period. In that retention period, the information can't be used, and that's what makes it an archive. And then we have the disposition, which is the destruction of the information. Pre-GDPMS, this would have consisted of old data that's not necessarily classified. You would have got that data from places that you're not sure about. You won't know where it's come from. You won't know whether you had consent to use the data. You won't have any ideas about how you got that data or why you collected it perhaps in the first place. It's not understood how long you should keep each of those records for. There's no formal archive location or repository for the information once you've finished using it. And there's no formal destruction process. So these are the problems that you're going to be facing in not having formal record keeping structure. The other thing to consider here too is that record keeping is a fine art. Post GDPMS, you'll have new data that comes into the organisation and it will be classified and it'll be attached to schedules. We'll know where it's come from and where it's used. This is an automatic process in the GDPMS. Then we know exactly when it becomes a record, and the reason we know when it becomes a record is because we've done the first step, which is to classify the data when we've collected that data from our data subjects. Again, this is an automatic step. We now know exactly how long to keep it for. Once it's finished being used, we move it into its archive and we commence the archive retention period. Now we know where it is as well, because we have set up formal record keeping archives. Again, this is an automatic process. Finally, we have a formal disposition process. And a formal disposition process within GDPMS also happens automatically. And the way that the GDPMS functions is that information that you create in the GDPMS about the things that you do with the GDPMS are automatically converted into records, and they're automatically stored for a finite period of time, and then they're automatically destroyed once that period of retention has expired.